Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and welcome to the platform Are We Transforming? Pardon me, today I'm having a bit of flu, but I believe we're going to be having a very important and interesting time. Today we are having a session with Busi. I would love her to introduce herself, but for the purpose of those who are joining us for the first time, Are We Transforming is a platform where we engage on different topics that are affecting people socially, economically, or otherwise. The idea is to identify gaps and collectively come up with solutions that we can use either in our day-to-day life or at our work situation or workplaces, or even in our families. So today we decided to choose a topic that speaks to parenting. And since tomorrow it's Mother's Day, we thought this would be a very nice topic to discuss. The reason for choosing this topic that says accepting your child's special needs is the first step towards helping them to soar was because I personally had an experience of a child who was not talking for 4 years after he was born. During that period, that was one of those difficult moments that one experienced in life. And I met Busi on Facebook, and somehow we decided to discuss about these things because she was talking about it. And I learned a whole lot of things from her. And I was blessed because eventually my child, through therapy and going through different types of sessions, he ended up now talking. So I thought this would be a nice topic to discuss because there's been many people that came to me asking, how did you do it? And I didn't do anything. I think it was God's doing, God wanting to show his powers through my child. But I seen Busi grow from taking care of her child up until owning a school and making this sort of a lifestyle where she can even advise other people on how to live this life. So I would love her to be free to talk about her journey, and those who are participating can also ask questions or share your experience, because I believe many people can learn from this. This is one of the areas that will make a parent feel like they're not good enough. And it is only through discussions and sharing with people that you realize you're actually having a very special gift that you're supposed to take care of. God entrusted you to do that for a reason. So I will allow Busi to introduce herself and her businesses, and then she can take us through her journey. And welcome to everybody that is joining us. I really, really appreciate your time. Busi?
Thanks, Tembi. Greetings to you and to everyone else who's in the platform. As Tembi has said, my name is Busi Dziba, based in Centurion in Gauteng, and actually I was born and raised in Gauteng. And I'm married to Lutando from Eastern Cape. Together we've been married almost 22 years now, and we've got 3 kids, a boy and 2 girls. And Bonga is our firstborn. He's the one who was born with Down syndrome condition 17 years ago. He's now 17. So a little bit about myself. Yes, besides being a wife and being a mother, I'm an entrepreneur. I've got about 3 businesses, if I may call. I'm quite busy. But Bongulwazi Consulting, which focuses on working with organizations to help them deliver their strategy through people and practices that we put in place. The main flagship program that I'm working with organizations there is the Women Leadership Program, which is now a global award-winning program. This program focuses on spending time with women and unpacking different issues that women deal with the intention of finding initiatives that helps them to deal with whatever they're dealing with in order for them to perform even better. So the outcome is about performance, but it's just going through the journey, because as women, we carry, a lot of workload over our shoulders. We play different roles, and that can impact even the way we do our work in the workplace. So that is the consulting work that I do. And I also train and facilitate strategy sessions, work readiness program for university going students, focusing mainly on universities that are from previously disadvantaged universities. So we run a program called Work Readiness for them in order to prepare them to better, perform as they hit the ground in the workplace, especially currently we've been focusing mainly on our future chartered accountant students. And then as Thembi has highlighted, in 2018, I started a school, Bongulwazi Montessorri School. And the school mainly, it was founded through frustrations that I was going through in finding a school, even just for my son. My two daughters have been through a Montessori school, and I saw what a Montessori can do to a child. And also given the fact that I'm not marketing Montessori, but I am a Montessori entrepreneur, but I've seen what it can do. It was mainly focused on children which had learning challenges, by Maria Montessori, the founder. The late Maria Montessori, and the program works so well with the children who had learning challenges that they also use it for children who don't have any learning challenges, children that we call normal. So I started the school then, and the aim of the school is open to both children that are enabled and that are disabled. It's been a journey. It's based in Glen Austin in Midrand. And then I also have a Bongulwazi Foundation. For my school also, I focus on educating children from low-income groups or from poor backgrounds with the aim of cutting the cycle of poverty through education, So if you are coming from a background where everyone maybe is a domestic worker, so these children, they must aspire to do more and to find jobs or even start their own businesses that can help their families and be able to stand and not continue with the cycle of just living in poverty. So that is the school part. And the foundation's aim is to look for funding for that program. We call it Educate a Child program. And then because of my passion as well, I love working with women. You've probably picked that up already. I'm very passionate about women development. So in 2016, I started dialogues with women who are raising children with special needs. That was just a time for me. Actually, God was like, you need to do this thing, open up to other women that are out there that are in the same page so that you can share your journey, learn from each other. So the platform was there to give these women an opportunity to talk about their journey of raising children with special needs, and of course to seek for help, from professionals, bring in, some of the therapists that are out there that are helping us in order to help our children soar, to greater heights. So I've been running this dialogue since November 2016. I've partnered with 2 schools in Tembisa. These 2 schools, they cater for children with special needs. So they've offered, an opportunity for me, to interact with their parents. So some of these sessions we had men joining us, which has been great because, a child is not raised by only females, by a mother, but a father, whether they are there in a marriage context or even outside of marriage, there is that role. So we've had men joining us, but the majority, about 99.8%, has been women. So that's what I've been doing. And this, of course, the dialogues, which we'll be working on having seminars and workshops, is sitting under the Bongulwazi Foundation. So the Educate a Child and the dialogue sits under Bongulwazi Foundation. So going back to the topic of today, which, I just want to read it again, that says, accepting your child's special needs is the first step towards helping him or her soar in life. So when Thembi raised this topic to me and said, Busi, can you please come and join me in this platform to talk about this topic of accepting your child's special needs? It's the first step, towards helping your child to be their best, to even unleash the potential that they have. So I've reflected on the topic, and my thoughts, which I will put them forward today, are coming from my experience as a mother, raising a child, raising Bonga. My son is Bonga. As a mother, to Bonga for the past 17 years, the journey that I've been through. And also I will be talking about some of the things that I've discussed with the women that I've interacted with through the dialogues of raising children with special needs. So I reflected, I was like, actually, you know what, the journey begins with myself as a mother. From my experience, I realized that, you know, before I even accept this, I wouldn't call it a challenge, my reality of raising a child with special needs, before I accept that my child has special needs, I went through a lot. I remember that, you know, when you're pregnant, you've got an option to find out if you are carrying a child who has any form of disability. You can do some tests, they can let you know. And in my case, I didn't do that because the question that I asked, I do find out that my child has any form of disability. Is there a treatment that you can take to reverse the situation or not? Then my doctor said, there's no treatment, but it's just to prepare you as a parent and also to give you an option if you want to terminate. So my husband and I, of course, we said that's not an option, and I didn't want to deal with it. And to be telling you the truth, I didn't even think that I will have a child with a special need. I don't think there's a mother out there who thinks that, oh, I've got a chance of having a child with special need. I don't know. So by the time your child is born, so you know it, you've through the tests that you've done pre-pregnancy, or you know it post-delivery. I don't think there's anything that can prepare you for that. And as a result, I found that as a parent, you go through different stages. And I think for me, in my journey, the first stage that I went through was this phase of denial. So our son, of course, was born. And then while I was still in hospital, the doctor actually came in the room when I was with friends, and he told me the news that they suspect that Bonga has Down syndrome, and they want to run the test in front of my friends, which was not cool. The question I asked was like, why do you suspect that? And he mentioned that, oh, he's got a little bit of flat nose, the ears, you know, he talked about his features. And Bonga was born in the United States. We were in the US at that time, my husband and I. And then I said to the doctor, no, he looks like us. We are actually African. We're not even African American. We are African. And he looks like us. So that was the first step of denial right there, because I've seen him for 2 days. Yes, there were complications. He was a week early and he looked like he was like 37 weeks, although he was 39 weeks. So there were a lot of complications and he was still in ICU and so on. But I thought, like any other child, you know, whatever he might, you know, he can go through and he'll be fine. But it didn't strike me that he might have a special need. He might have even a Down syndrome. So from that moment, I dismissed it. So that moment of, you know, just not wanting to deal with whatever may come your way, and so you dismiss it, that was the beginning of denial. And for me, and I don't know, my husband and I didn't talk about it then, but I think maybe from his side, whether he was in denial or not at that time, I don't know, we've never talked about that first day, but he was just supportive of whatever I said the doctors must do. So 3 months later, just to cut the long story short, we came back to South Africa. We were there for 5 years, so he was born towards the end of our stay there. So we came back to South Africa. He was sick a month later, went to the hospital. Of course, then they picked it up. And I was like, surely these doctors are South Africans. They know how South Africans look like. So that's how we find out. Even with that, you know, the tests, they confirmed, you know, I was like, my child is not, until, you know, the different stages, you know, when the child, we come from different backgrounds, your backgrounds, you know, informed you in terms of what the child must reach, what developmental stage they must reach at a certain time. And for my case, I was even reading a book. Someone gave me a book that was telling me weekly that, you know, he was still in my womb, you know, he's at this stage, you know, he's weighing this much, this has developed, now the lungs, now this. So there was that tracking. And as parents, we do that. It's normal because, you know, there's some studies out there, there's evidence that, okay, at a certain age, approximately, the child must start crawling, the child must start walking and start talking. So you parent with that in mind because it's part of you. So when you find out that the child is a special need, you expect those things because you haven't accepted that your child has special needs. And what comes with that, and all these issues are happening, it's not even about your child at this stage, it's about you. That's why I'm talking about the self first before admitting that your child. That's what you go, you stick to what you know. that the child must be doing this. Because you haven't accepted that your child has special needs, you are not doing anything to even assist your child. You're not taking your child for any therapy or any intervention that will assist your child to become their best, to even to help them walk. So I've gone through that stage where I was just in denial, and I've picked up that there are a lot of women out there through even the discussions with the dialogue that we go through denial, and it's not about the child, it's about me. Sometimes we go through denial because of what I call the prisoners, dealing with the prisoners. I call it, we need to deal with our prisoners. The fear, the fear of the unknown. You ask yourself, will your child walk? Will your child, whatever challenges the child is having, you ask yourself this question. And in that stage, you end up building stories that you tell yourself that, no, my child won't be like others. They will like this, they will be like this. And you even build other stories about the community that you live in. So I've realized that raising a child with special needs, you get a lot of rejection from community, rejection from community in terms of where you stay, and then rejection also from the schools, from different places. So sometimes the rejection is not even there, but it's because of the space that we are at, I remember before I shared it even with my friends that my child has a special need, the first person I've shared and I told and I opened up to, she was a friend and she was a medical doctor. It was like Bonga was almost, 8-9 months. And she was like, I know that, he's got Down syndrome. And I was like, really? Because I thought it's my own secret. I'm the only one who knows. That I was assuming certain things about even people around me. For example, there was this lady who hugged him for a long time away in a function, and she was just holding Ubonga for a long time. And I thought she was doing that because she was feeling sorry for me, holding my child and like, oh, poor Busi, this child's got special needs. The story I was telling myself. That woman didn't say that. Knowing better now, I know she was just embracing Ubonga because previously she has been exposed to children with special needs and she could see that. But to her, it was just Bonga and she was just loving this child. So there are stories that we tell ourselves, and if we don't deal with these stories, they end up appearing. I want to use the word appearing as reality. Those things we need to deal with, and that is part of accepting what your child is faced with. So dealing with the stories that you tell yourself, dealing with issues of how you think people think about you. Sometimes people ask questions like, okay, who's at fault, the mother or is it a father? Where is this coming from? From which genes is this thing coming from? So you spend so much time doing those things, and you spend so much time even hiding in a corner. Sometimes I remember there was help. This other lady was inviting and said, Bonga must come and visit. Because of my insecurities, because of my fears, I didn't even allow Bonga to go and visit because I was fearful that what if they leave the gate open and Bonga walks out? What if syndrome? I call what if syndrome. So you build these stories. What if this? What if the child doesn't walk? What if? And all these what ifs, these fears, sometimes even control. You try to control the situation so much, you end up doing damage. I did that, like trying to be in control, thinking I've got it all, figure it out. And yet I was totally, wrong. So all of these things, I think it's important to check self first. That where am I in this thing? Even focus on your child, because I believe that you cannot give something you do not have. If you want your child to be the best, it has to start with you. You need to start believing that your child can be the best they can be. You need to start also be okay with the fact that your child was born with this. And then, of course, moving from there, then you accept that this is the situation that I have. And I think once we deal with it, then you can start accepting that, okay, you've been through this denial, and you can't be in denial forever. Because if you're in denial forever, you delay your child, because some of the decisions that you make, they're not even the best decision for your child. They're not the best decision for the child. And some of them, they might be suitable for you as a parent. Like, for example, in terms of where you take your child to school. I didn't take Bonga to special needs school at the beginning because I was like, Bonga is fine. I consider myself as a woman of faith. I was faithful that he will overcome whatever. So you make decisions based on how you feel, and those decisions might not be the best decision for your child. And if you don't accept to make decisions about the help that your child needs, like therapy, the therapy plays a big role, I think, in almost all children, special needs. So with Bonga, physiotherapy, the occupational therapy, the speech therapy, there are people out there that have studied these things, they know what's best, and also understanding when to introduce what at a right time as well. So I think I'm also open, so I must say that, open for questions if I go even further, and any interaction, any comments or questions. I think the first part I wanted to highlight is that you need to deal with how you feel inside, your mental state. Some parents, I've talked to some parents that, they can't even cope because they haven't accepted in their mind, and that end up affecting their health. And also their health can be affected because you don't want to accept help from other people because you want to be in control, and you get so exhausted because your energy is on this child. It's another situation than if you have siblings, you end up neglecting other siblings. The child has siblings. So you can end up neglecting other siblings because you're focusing on this child, and that's not healthy. It's taking care of your health, not exercising, you're not going out there to socialize with other people because you haven't accepted, you're even embarrassed sometimes. This child's going to embarrass me, maybe, depending on the special need that the child has, like if they're making noises and so on. And I think those are the issues that you need to deal with, within you. And we'll touch the question on how to go about that. I don't know. I just want to stop there for any questions.
Okay, we have got Susan Mahasi.
Yeah.
You can raise your question.
Sis Tembi, mine is not a question as such, but just to say, in any situation, when I was listening to your story, in any situation that you find yourself in, whether bad or good, the first thing is to move out of the denial zone and just to accept. If you accept, then everything seems to get better. That is just my input on the whole discussion. Thanks, Sis Tembi.
Okay. Any other question or comment? Thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate it. While they are still thinking, Busi, I was asking myself as you were talking, at what stage did you say to yourself, now I have to snap out of this denial and embarrassment, which was not necessarily an embarrassment, but something that you felt was not good enough to show off to people? At what stage did you think, I just have to do something that will benefit my child?
So you become in denial until reality hits. So when a child is still a baby, when Banga was still a baby, it wasn't that obvious that he's got special needs because he was crying. He was actually a very sweet baby, not crying a lot, eating. And once you reach a stage that now the child's supposed to be walking, like supposed to be not even walking, crawling, it's like around 5 months, 6 months, I realized that, the child is not doing much. It's not crawling, it's not rolling. That's when now the reality hits, and I think that's the time also around 5 months when he was 5 months old, opening up and talking, to people that were close to me, people that I trusted, that I can share this with. And then I started researching because it's important as well to find out about even the condition that your child has. I started, checking it out, what's the help out there. At the beginning, I think even when we were here in South Africa, I think he was about 3 months when he was sick. The doctors picked it up here in South Africa that he's got special needs, and they did the test. They gave me some booklets to read. To be honest, I look at those booklets and I look at the headings, I put them away. I didn't even read them. This is not my son. It's not about my son. Then when he was now not crawling, the developmental stage that we talk about that the child at this age is supposed to be having, then that's when the reality kicked in, not fully kicked in, just a bit of it, that, okay, this child is not crawling, and if I'm not doing anything about it, he can sit here and take longer, but, if we seek for help, So that's when I started now, reading what can be done, then the physio, and then I checked different places. There was a baby center here in Linwood that I went and to check what are they offering. Then they were offering different things, occupational therapy, speech therapy, and physio. Started him on physio, explaining not just to strengthen his muscles and to exercise and to help him to be in the position, even just to be in the position that he could crawl. So that's when I started now seeking for help, putting him for physio. And I've talked to different people also, like knowing which intervention to put when. For example, there was this lady in one of the dialogues, had a child also with a Down syndrome condition, and the child was like about 10 months at the time. The child wasn't crawling, and they were doing occupational therapies. And I'm not a specialist, I'm not an expert in this, but through my journey, I said, try physio first, because the physio will help the child in terms of even being in the position. Bonga, the way he was trying to crawl, he was opening up his legs too much, and the physio helped that we need to put him in this position so that he can strengthen and so on. So that's when we started looking for those options, because now we were hit with the reality that this child is not doing this ABC. So the accepting as well was about accepting that the things that I know as normal, they might not apply to him. What we define as society as normal apply to him. At this stage, I didn't rule them out completely. I didn't rule him out that he will never go to school. But I said, his journey is going to be different. He will walk, he will talk eventually. I started doing that. And I started stopping to compare, because as parents, it's natural, even as adults, we compare ourselves, even in the workplace, there's competition everywhere. You measure performance. That brings a level of competition. In school. Children go on different sports, they participate in different sports. So there is that competition that is built within us. That as parents, we do that, because I started comparing that my child is supposed to be doing this, the other kids are doing this. I had to train myself to stop comparing and to tell myself that he will do it at the time when he's ready. He will walk at the time when he's ready. That helped me to start now realizing that I need to seek for help at that time. I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
You said something very important about comparing. Also, in the beginning, you spoke about decisions that a parent will take based on the fears that they have. Like, for instance, being in denial. Special needs for me is not necessarily much about a child being disabled. There are kids who are challenges in terms of studying, and they don't necessarily fit in classes that are considered normal classes in public school or private schools. And parents, because of affordability, will usually force the kids to go to those schools. And then the kids become, sort of bogged down because they are no longer able to be themselves. There's no attention provided to them, so forth. And that is probably because of the competition. My child should be like so-and-so's child because I can afford. What advice would you give to such parents for them to snap out of that denial?
I think, especially for the children that don't have, what do I call it? I don't even like especially obvious physical disabilities. We have, kids that suffer from ADD and all of that. And in most of the parents that I've talked to, they will tell you that when you ask, what is the diagnosis, with your child? Most of them, they will say, I was told that my child is a slow learner, and the child was struggling and at school. And eventually the school rejected my child and said, we cannot continue with the child. So I think for parents that are in that space, of course, to accept feedback. Feedback is good, and feedback, you listen to it. Some of the things might work for you, some of the things might not work. But once you receive that feedback, just to research and to find out about your child, study your child, observe your child, be involved. I think also that's what has helped me as well, that I allow my child to be my teacher. I've allowed Bonga to be my teacher, to teach me, okay, this is what he will do things, this is how he prefers to do things. So most of the time, sometimes as parents, we outsource parenting and we're not so involved in the child's daily activities. Go through the child's homework, look what is happening, and then from there engage the school. Most of the schools now, they've got a help, like some they have social workers, even therapists in some of the schools that they come and assist. And for private schools, then some of the therapy, is accessible. So find out, study your child, do a research, even take your child to an educational therapist, that has helped, that they can check, the level of education, the level that your child is at, and then they can recommend some of the initiatives that you can work on to assist, because you'll find that some of the children, not that they're struggling, maybe there's a problem with hearing. There's a problem with hearing, and if you don't take your child maybe to a hearing test, then the child is going to struggle because the child can't hear in class. Therefore, how can they perform if they can't hear? Or maybe they can't see. You remember when I took Bonga for an eye test and did the classes, and when the classes came, and I took very long, to take him for the eye test, and I was like, wow, I've delayed my child because the lens was so thick. I was like, wow, my child hasn't been seeing properly. They affect learning. So study your child, just check, send your child for, regular checks, check the hearing, because it might not be with the mind, but it might be the hearing, it might be the seeing. The child doesn't see the teacher, especially in a school where the teacher is using a board or anything. And if they don't see, especially when they're young, the kids, they learn by copying. So if they can't see what they're supposed to copy, if they can't hear what they're supposed to copy, if they can't hear, they can't verbalize it, because so there is that as well. So for the kids that don't have a diagnosed special need, but the child is struggling, check those things. And if everything you've checked according to the obvious, like the different senses, they are fine, then, educational therapists, they can check different things because they are trained to do that. And you can take it from there. And one thing before I come back to you, I see, and Suzanne, I don't know if it's a new hand. I just want to make a note of, in terms of the outsourced help that we get as parents with special needs today, whether it's the OT, occupational therapy, intervention, speech, educational therapist, and formation, because what I've picked up, I support therapists. I believe there is a place for them, but not everything they say, applies to your child. And what I've picked up is because most of the time they use, the theory that they have learned, and this theory is based on studies that are, scientifically proven. So there's substance in that. So I'm not questioning the substance. Because in terms of the assessment, when they do the assessments, to some, not all, I picked up that because of the short span time that they spend with your child, some of the conclusion might not apply. And if you take them as gospel, they can be as restrictive as helping you. So you need to be, even when you read this report, be flexible, and then also consult with others. We'll get a report from one specialist and I send it to another specialist and this is what I've received, and I'll send it to the principal at school. This is the report that I got from, but you spend the majority of the time with my child. What do you think of this report? Let that report be a tool to help, but it mustn't be a gospel now that, this book says this. Recently with another parent who just said, I've read in the book, it says, laughed, and I said, not everything goes according to the book, but the research is there, to assist us, because people have gone before us and they've studied these things. So I just wanted to raise that, because it can be very discouraging. I remember there was one report that I received about Bonga from one of the tests, the assessment. And this report was so negative, it was so negative. And I couldn't understand it. And that school, they wanted the report, to the point that I didn't give it to the principal. I said, this report, what's written here, it's not my sign. I don't know whether it's denial or what, but for me, I was like, it helps as well. I also believe what you speak about your child is important as well, because if you keep on saying my child is dumb, my child is stupid, you'll start seeing those traits, So I said to the principal, this report, I am keeping it. Maybe one day I'll write a book and I will quote and say, this is what was said, this is the reality. But I was just saying that jokingly, because it was just to me like very, very extreme, if I may say. Okay.
Susan,
Yeah.
sorry for keeping you long, but this is very educative. You
Okay. Can we hear Sister Tembi?
Yes.
Okay. There's an African proverb that says, it takes a village to raise a child. And listening to your stories, Ms Busi, I think the issue of support, whether it's internal or external, might be important. How do you then, what was the support like from your family and friends and from the husband? Because I think I've seen with my relatives, I've seen with my friends, either at work or just neighbors, a special need child need a lot of so for him for you to raise a special child, you need support, and I think you just touched on it when you were talking about your child's report and stuff. But how important is it to have a strong support to raise a special child?
Yeah. Thanks, Susan. Yes. So yes, you're right. Support is very, very important. And if you don't have support, you'll be exhausted, I must say. If you don't, sometimes support is available and you reject it. Sometimes it's not there, you need to create it. So it's very important. So from the family, when you have a child with special needs, especially as Africans, there are a lot of labels that people give to children with special needs. The support starts by you opening up to your family and talking to your family members in terms of the condition that your child has. Talking to your family members about your fears. I'm not saying we shouldn't be fearful, but we must deal with the fear. Sharing, with family members. And in the sharing, especially I'm starting from the family because that's where it starts first, there will be those that will support you and there will be those that won't support you. And as a parent, I believe you need to be okay with it. Don't be offended by those that don't support you. Just go with the ones that support you. And allowing the family support, like allowing them space in your child, because sometimes as parents, we close up, become so protective that we don't allow other family members to be in this journey of raising this child. As you have said, it takes a village. Allow them, give them space, but give them space with some assistance, because you're dealing with the child, you're staying with the child every day. Tell them what he likes, what upsets him. Share whatever you know with them. And yes, the support doesn't end with family. Open up to the people that are close to you, friendships that you build. It takes also you allowing your child to be part of those communities, because what I found as well, some parents, they just become this nuclear family and they stay at home. They don't no longer go to functions because they feel that people will be looking. And it's not about the child, that remember, it's about you, because it's those stories you tell yourself that people will be looking at you. And depending on the special needs, some kids, they make certain sounds. Some kid, I remember my Ubonga, like for a long time, he crawled on his belly. There's, they've got a name for it. It's like as if he's this, reptile, for a very long time. So if you're going to be concerned, if I come out, if I expand the support outside myself, you need to be comfortable with that. And what I've said, even to other parents, is something that I've applied as well. If you come across, if you open up yourself to be in the space that you get the community that will support you, you get judged in that. Remember, it is not about you. Every time if someone says, oh, this child doesn't listen, this other grandmother said, you must take him to stay with his grandmother. This grandmother will teach him, order, lessons and so on. So Bonga likes to sit in the table. So if we go to a function and you tell him to go and play with other kids, he doesn't like that. He just want to be part of the social gathering. So if they're parents, so this grandma was like, kids are sitting there outside playing, you must go and sit there. So you need to understand that those people, they spin from the framework where they are. It's about where the space that these people are at, and it has nothing to do with you. It's not about you not teaching your child, but it's because of their framework. So the support of close friends, you bring them in, and over and above that, the support of other forums of parents that are experiencing similar, journey with you helps as a form of a support group. Like, for example, the dialogues that have been running with these women, that's another a form of support, because we are there as women supporting each other. We discuss certain things, we share information that forms as a support group. So you can only become part of those support groups if you are okay with self, you are okay and now comfortable with coming out. It sounds like, like in AAA addiction, coming out, and you come out that I'm the parent, I've got this, and I want to form even social group for your own child to interact, to be used to interact with people. And even that, it plays a role in your child's social development as well. But if you keep your child at home, of course, you want. So yes, I hope I've answered that.
I hope it was answered. Had you can proceed.
Thank you. I wanted to ask on the aspect of raising a child with special needs into teenagehood. I think we're all aware that raising a child, specifically a teenager in itself, comes with challenges or opportunities of this particular child carving their identity. That in itself can result in some sort of aggression, a child not being cooperative, and all of that. What are the processes or even support measures that which you would put in place to ensure that the teenage stage in itself is taken care of, and there is that level of support to still ensure that this child grows into an independent being?
Wow. Thanks, Khadi. That's an interesting question that I'm dealing with. Bonga is 17, he's a teenager. And I think that was a scary moment for me, because when he was starting, approaching that stage, I got stage and I was like, I need help. I need to talk to people who've traveled this journey before, and as you know, teenagehood affects all teenagers in a similar way. There's that, being reserved, you want your space and so on. And I think the process starts earlier than when you reach teenagehood. The process of teaching your child to be independent from a very young age, giving your child responsibilities to take care of, giving your child chores so that he gets that sense of accountability, the sense of meaning, the sense of purpose, because teenagehood, it shakes that, you're figuring yourself out, your purpose and so on. So to build that, from a very young age, especially with child with special needs, because we tend to protect them so much that we don't give them responsibilities. We don't, create opportunities for them to be independent. And when I try to answer this, I don't think I've figured it all out yet. So I think, firstly, what I've picked up, personally, is that, especially when they reach teenagehood, they might not connect with you as a parent, but be open, for them to connect with someone else. If they're thinking of something, you talk to them, they reserve, they don't want to talk. Create a space that they can feel free to go and talk to someone, of course, someone you trust, another adult that you trust. So create that structure for them that they can have an outlet where they open up, especially if they can speak and so on. And then also socially, like with Bonga, I've been trying to even putting him in different, social groups that that he can, that he can enjoy his teenagehood and interact with children his age. Of course, children his age are more advanced than him, so you have to also look at how he can fit in some of the groups. It might cause more damage because it might be rejected, but you spend the time with the child, earlier on. Like Bonga is 17, but the issue of independence, I don't think he's got a problem with that, because I've driven it so much that, or maybe even too much, that I don't think anyone can take advantage. He can express himself if he's not happy with something. So create those platforms where he can interact with other, teenagers, that they can assist him, that they can help him. And then, of course, there are other issues of, health, things that teenagers do when they reach teenagehood, boys, and so on. It's just, I think for me, was asking help to get to understand that stage, because Bonga is my firstborn, and I don't have other teenagers before him. So I had to go and ask other parents, you know, who are raising children with special needs, that, okay, at this stage, what happens? And then they explain that this is what happens and so on, give the space, you talk about things. The main thing is to talk about things, open up and create a supportive structure outside yourself, that he can feel that, you know, I'm with these people and I can be myself. Then I will hear him say, yes, dude. The language even changes, and I'm like, oh, okay, the teenage dude has kicked in, calling others dude and all of that. So I think for me, it's that I can say that opening that circle and finding out, and I don't think I've even done justice in explaining this, because that's the space where I'm still at as well, trying to figure it out. And also looking at, especially from the educational point of view, you reach a point where you keep on trying, especially if your child has challenges academically. You keep on pushing the academics. You keep on pushing that, okay, your child needs to know the normal, you know, mainstream subjects and so on. And it's okay to just maybe be at ease there and say, okay, this route is not working. Let's try something else. Let's introduce other things, like maybe music. If he studied drum classes, he's interested in it, you find what he's interested in, you introduce those things. In terms of trade, he's 17 now, and I'm like, yo, you know, like I'm looking at those options currently right now in terms of trade, other skills that he can gain, not forgetting the academic, you know, the side of things, but looking at other options that he can do, and that will make him an independent individual. I've got one example, you know, just in explaining this, one example, this lady, a son who has an autistic condition, and the son is now late 20s, if not early 30s now, autistic, and he is married. To me, that is a beautiful story I've ever had. Like I've hosted some of the dialogues in her place. The son is autistic, and he's married to a wife, you know, who's autistic, but more functional. The wife is more functional because she can even drive. They both can talk, like there were delays, of course, but the wife is more functional. So what they have done, especially in the teenagehood, and not every family can do that, but because they have family businesses, they've incorporated, you know, both of the husband, the son, and the wife into the business, giving them small responsibilities, making them feel like, okay, this is my job, this is what I do. They started that very early, and they've got actually 3 kids. They've been married for 10 years. And the wife had a child with other challenges. That came, you know, the birth of the child. But their firstborn just graduated last week with honors. So 2 parents that are autistic, the child that graduated, the firstborn, with honors, she's not autistic, the firstborn, and they've got 2 boys that are also autistic. You know, the youngest now, I'm probably doing grade 3, is like what age? 7, 8, 9. The youngest child, and there's about 1 year apart, the 2 boys. That family, the mother has created ways to, from the teenagehood stage, created ways that, okay, the child can go and volunteer somewhere else, you know, just to give that meaning, because I think the teenage stage comes with the sense of belonging, identity, purpose. You know, I think those 3 things, if you can create things around those 3 things, that a child can have a sense of belonging, that maybe I'm belonging to the certain group, whether it's music, whether whatever, cooking, whatever interest that he may have, that sense of belonging. And of course, hoping by this time they reach teenagehood, you've been working on the issue of identity. They know who they are. I mean, Bonga will tell his sisters that you can't talk to your big brother. He calls himself big brother. You can't speak to your big brother like that. The younger one's got an attitude like she likes snapping, and she knows that she can't snap on Bonga. Both of them, they are advanced academically. If we compare, we shouldn't compare, but you know, they are advanced academically compared to Bonga. But he knows they cannot talk to him anyhow. He knows that he's their big brother. You know, so those issues of self, you know, development, identity, it's a process that we shouldn't start it when they're teenagers, but if we continue, then they don't lose themselves in their teenagehood trying to find themselves, but they already know. And then creating those circles where they can belong, purpose, by giving them responsibilities that gives them that sense of purpose, that they can contribute to whatever is happening, whether in the family or outside of community. I don't know if I've answered that, Khadi. Hope Yes, just from the little that I know of teenagehood. Yeah.
Thank you so much. You have said quite a number of things and at the same time give answers to them. So some of the questions that I wanted to ask you already spoken to, and I believe as you proceed, you'll be able to cover some of those. So maybe we should let you proceed to the next part, and then we can take the second round of questions again.
I've actually touched on some of, the stuff I wanted to cover. You go through that stage of denial, and then you accept your reality. We talked a lot about that. You accept that this is my reality. I call it my new normal. That's what when I started realizing that, okay, this is what I'm dealing with, I call it my new normal. And then you accept your new normal, and you reach a stage, this is the stages that I've went through, a stage of discovery. You've accepted now. The aim, of course, is to unleash that potential in your child. The aim is to make your child soar to greater heights. So it doesn't end by you accepting that, yes, I embrace the fact that my child has special needs. But now you go through a stage of discovery. That's what I went through, that after accepting, you go through a stage of discovery, searching and finding out what help is available there for your child, different perspective. You find out the condition, what is it the condition is all about, and then also what are the other initiatives that are available to assist you. So we've got internet now. You can go through the internet and just research and read, about the condition. And then, of course, after, the research, this discovery part, also interacting in different platforms. Since now you've opened up to talk about the condition that your child is going through. And I think the stage of discovery, it's not only discovering things about your child, but I think it's discovering things about yourself as well. For me, I've learned a lot about myself through the journey of raising Bonga. Discover stuff about yourself, things that you've embraced, maybe from your childhood that you need to let go of, some of the things that you need to unlearn. That, if you raise, this is how you raise children, you allow your child now to be your teacher. You discover that, okay, these are the things that, he likes, and you study your child, and you study, the research that is, you get information from different platforms. So this stage is very helpful. And what I've picked up, I think I've mentioned this earlier on, that this stage can build you or it can break you as well. So it can build you in expanding your knowledge, in giving you enough information so that you can make the right decision, or you can act on the extreme. I've met parents that have read this because the book says this, it should be like this. Or sometimes you research, and the research focus is very heavy, maybe on the don'ts or the things that the child cannot do because of this condition. So that's where I said this process as well, it shouldn't take you to a place of depression, that you read that this is what an autistic child goes through, and this is what, and then you take it as gospel that now my child is going to go through the stages. So it is when that you learn, you take the research that you've done, that the learning that you've done, you mix it with the reality of what your child is teaching you, because the research or other information, it just talks on average that normally children with this condition, they react this way, but your child is still an individual. It's still, he still has his own journey, you never know, and you get different variation of any condition. So the caution there is not to allow the research to kill you. I know I'm talking more extreme, not to allow the research or the stuff that you work, that it puts you in a space that there is no hope, there is no change. To discover, it's important because then you will be equipped with the information that you need in order to make the right decisions for your child. Of course, with that comes, you can't be fooled with this knowledge and not adapt. You need to adapt your ways, change certain things, apply certain things from the research we have done. Not everything will work, but try and celebrate small wins. If your child was doing this and then you celebrate, you listen to other people. I remember this couple that came to one of the dialogues, and I think I've mentioned it earlier on, that their child was not rolling and was having Down syndrome condition. And I said to them, try physio first before OT. The child was doing occupational therapy. I said, physio helps before the occupational therapy. And they, they went home and they changed, they speak to their OT and said, we want to try physio. They tried physio. Within a month, the child started rolling, started crawling. And this was December 2016. And the child is walking right now. And so, I mean, to reach a point that, to understand that this is a journey, as much as you as a parent who's raising this child, are in a journey of learning about the condition, learning about yourself, it's a journey for a child as well that, he will make his own discoveries. The main thing is to support and to create an environment that is conducive for this child to be their best, at what they are created to be. So that also is quite important, in that learning from others as well. Be willing to learn from others, that discovery and adaptation.
As a school owner, how do you apply your experiences now to help other parents? What advice would you give to the early child development centers owners or preschool owners? In my case, I discovered that my son could not speak when he was 1. And it was when I decided not to have a helper and took him to a preschool. So it was like, we were still in Cape Town at the time. The teacher called me and she said, you must take him for speech and hearing test, because he doesn't respond the way other kids respond. It will take like a long time to respond. And then the speech therapist told me he's got a speech delay. There and there, I told myself, what should I do? But at the same time, I was asking myself, should I have not taken him to that preschool? I would not have known, because I would have taken him probably to a school where they would not even pick it up, because they are probably not paying attention. It's about the kids came to play, which assisted me, because 4 years down the line, now you could speak after having gone through so much therapy and prayer. So what advice would you give to early child development owners? Because I think that's where some of the neglects would be, since the parents have to now go to work. Some are not married, some are single. They have to rely on these early child development centers and may not be able to pick it up. So as the owner of the school, what is it that you can advise them?
So firstly, what I want to mention is that my school is a Montessorri school. And it's a Montessorri school which has its methodology of the style of teaching, which I'll touch on that. I just want to also mention that, it's part of this accepting that, when your child has a special need, you need to understand that there are different types of schools. There are mainstream schools that caters for all the kids, that are considered to be normal. There are remedial schools that focuses on children that have some sort of, learning, challenges, not basically like children with special needs, but they're learning, challenges because maybe they're hyper or whatever. There are those remedial schools. Then there are schools that caters for children with special needs, like special needs parent. I remember in our journey with Bonga, at first he started going to school, I was still experiencing that denial stage. We took him to a mainstream, and the mainstream school, they loved him. I mean, he was adorable, they loved him and so on. But come the time, like he was there for 2 years, come the time for end-year concert where you want to give instruction, the child must do the ABC and they must follow those instructions. It was very frustrating for the teachers and the principal. So I will have that meeting once a year. During that time, they were like, we're trying to get him to do this and he's not doing it, and so on. And I will say, it's fine. If he doesn't want to do it, leave him. I didn't want to put pressure on him and also on the school. This happened for 2 years until the principal called me and said, yes, as much as we love your child, we take care of your child, because some parents, the early childhood development centers, they focus more on the care. The child comes, they take care, they clean up the child sings some few songs, and also they play. It's like a daycare. I call those daycare. So they focus so much on that, but they're not stimulating the child enough to just help the child's brain. With the Montessori, I've studied before opening the school. I went and did a course. I'm an accredited, international accredited Montessori teacher because I wanted to understand the philosophy behind it. So those are the options that are there that you can look at as a parent. Don't force feed the child in a place because you want your child to go to this school. Maybe the school is a well-known school, it's good academically, and you want your child to go there. If the school doesn't serve, your child, look for other options. So the mainstream, of course, they will tell you they're not trained to, to take children with special needs. And then you've got your remedial schools that at least they incorporate therapy in those schools. So I remember when we accepted the condition, we took him to a school that specializes with children with special needs. They even use swimming as therapy. So they were not teaching them how to swim, but they were teaching them survival moves if the child, for example, falls in the pool. But through that, there was therapy. It was developing some physical aspect of his body. So those schools, that's the advantage of the special needs schools and some of the remedial schools, is that the child gets exposed to that therapy. Some of the schools, they offer the therapy on site at the school. Some of the schools, they will refer you to the place where you can get assistance in terms of so that is important to consider those things and not take your child to a school because you think this is just a bad school, maybe it's in the top league, a level or whatever. So you look at those things. What comes to my school now, my school is open to children who are enabled and who are not who have disabilities. But we started 2018. And of course, COVID is part of that. So we've been there 3 years, but part of those 3 years there was COVID. I'm not trained as a special need, teacher. So my learning has been through raising a child with special needs. But then the Montessori methodology, which I've shared with you, Tembi, and you ended up taking your son there. What I've picked up, I'm not advertising, but I think I've reached a point that if the president would ask me today, what should we do with ECD? The early childhood development phase, I would say put all the kids under Montessori. Why is that? Because the Montessori methodology takes that every child's brain between the age 0 to 7, it's like an absorbent mind, it's like a sponge. It takes as much, so you need to feed it. So if we take our children who has challenges already to a place where they just play, they're not stimulated, that brain is not stimulated. But with the Montessori methodology, because of the activities, you use Montessori material to teach, children. So, and the Montessori, let me first talk about the philosophy of the Montessori. So the Montessori methodology was started by Maria Montessori. She started this, she was in Italy, long time. She was a medical doctor in Italy. And in Italy in those days, when they came across these kids who they didn't understand what's going on with them. They call them retarded kids, which I don't like that name, but that's what in the studies, when you read about Montessori, they call them those kids, and they will be involved in certain things that are illegal. They will arrest them. So there was a prison, that had these children. So Maria was going to the prison, to check the health of the kids, to kind of serve as a doctor in that hospital. And then she discovered these kids that were neglected by the community. But she discovered something like in the book, some of the books talks about this child, there was a penny that dropped and the child was not, but like the child's senses hear that penny and look for it. And then she put together these activities, learning activities based on the observations that she made on children, and hence now the way of teaching of Montessori. So that Montessori started catering for children with learning disabilities. And then it did very well. Then she studied and got more involved into the education space, that they figure out, research show that the children with learning disability that went through her program performed better than the children that were called normal. That brought attention now to Italy and even the United States. They come and wanted to check what's happening with these kids because they were considered to be retarded, but now they can do maths, they're learning language quickly. So it started like that, and then it was introduced to children that are considered to be normal as we know it for today. So then the challenge became, is that when you go to Montessori schools, I've been there, most of the schools, they cater for children that are normal. They're not even using this for children with special needs. So for me, like my desire for the school is to open it up to the children, especially because it does something. And we had one child that had an autistic condition. And when she came to study with us, she was five years old. And when she came, she couldn't speak, like she could say give instead of give me. Give. Like just saying one, like the part of the word, you know, and we took her through, you know, the process. And of course, different conditions requires parents to use medication. So she was on medication for the condition that she had. And then we picked up, because Montessorri, in observation, you observe a child. So through the observation and so on, we pick up that, you know, towards the end of the day, we can teach this child. She was picking up stuff. And at the early morning, because she took medication before she left home, so in the early hours, she would be like a zombie and so on. So I spoke to the parents and said, this is what we're noticing. I think the medication, I'm not a medical doctor, but the observation that we have seen is this. So can you talk to the doctor? We advise the parent, can you talk to the doctor and check if this medication is not too strong, because it just makes the child numb. The personality doesn't come out. Took the child to the doctor, and the doctor changed the medication to something light. After that, the child was more active. You know, we could teach her, like her Xhosa improved. She was like, like from someone who was saying, she was like, give me, and so on. So through the learning, I mean, this was in the period of 9 months. Like by the time like they moved and she went to an autistic school. You know, so there was great improvement because of the methodology. And also, I think now touching to the schooling, looking at different schools, but then there's this issue which just came up from this example, the issue of medication. Some of the kids, they do need medication. I am not against medication, although I don't prefer it. You know, and different parents have different styles. For me, you know, I think I'm more hard on parenting than any other parent. There's a need. If your child needs medication, you can't neglect that. But then what I've picked up sometimes, we give children medication so that we manage it. We manage the situation for ourselves. We want this child who are like very quiet and so on, because come change of medication, I'm using this story, I mean, I'm not mentioning any names, come the change of medication, the child was now hyper and things were coming out. The mother thought the child had learning problem, like there is not a hearing problem. She can hear, she's just naughty as a child, you know, just take away the special need aside, she's just naughty, you need to tell her, so she knows which button to press. So sometimes as children with special need, we change our parenting because parenting style, because we're like, oh no, this child's got special needs. And now you are not dealing with special needs. We are dealing with just being naughty, because all kids are naughty. All kids, they push boundaries. So you need to teach the child. And sometimes we just overload the child with medication because we don't want to manage that. I'm just now, I'm not saying that every child that's on medication, the parents don't want to manage, but we need to watch for those things, that as we find the right school for our children, the other initiative, and then sometimes to push the boundaries, to push and not to try too much to be soft because the child has a special need. So finding a school, I'm not sure if I've covered that into detail. So it's quite important. And for ECD, I mean, all the parents that I've talked to, that those that can, I've recommended, you know, a Montessorri. So it's not like sending your child to my school, but any school, Montessorri school, and tell you. And it's because of the methodology, the style of teaching, and because the Montessorri, it teaches the child everything. Like our kids here from our grade R's, they can read, they can do division, multiplication because of Montessorri, because it believes that you need to feed the child with all the information, and it sits in the unconscious mind of the child, and all the information that they need for geometry, for example, we teach them now. We teach them different shapes. They know that this is a pentagon, and they can tell you that it's a pentagon because it's got 5 sides. It's a hexagon. For us as parents, because our minds have been fed and have been trained to think a certain way. But for a child, whether a child has special need or not, there is that capability of the brain functioning. The main thing is to activate it, is to stimulate it. And especially, I think it's more special need to use those extra things that will stimulate the brain, because it's easy, for the child to relax because we think, oh no, he cannot understand that. But the more we feed that brain, and then we also use, with the Montessori, you also use different things. If the child likes cooking, for example, you use cooking to teach maths.
Yes.
So then the child can grasp it. I said with my son and said, okay, if you cook, if you take 2 cups and you're doing maths, but you're not in the traditional way of thinking maths, 1 + 1 is 2, but you use what the child likes to teach a specific field. Yeah, I think, we've got a hand there.
I can actually attest to the fact that Montessori worked for me. Now my son is the best performing learner in his school in terms of mathematics. He's talkative like never before. So yeah, it does work. It does work.
Especially for ECD,
Yeah.
for foundation, especially for foundation. So other parents, depending also with Montessori for ECD, you can use fully Montessori program, but as grade R and up, our education system, it wants you to have like a different curriculum incorporated into your Montessori. So for example, you can have a Montessori school that does CAPS, which is the national curriculum that is used here in South Africa. So CAPS is very demanding, like in terms of what a teacher must do. So you find some of the schools, then they become heavy on CAPS than Montessori. But at an ECD level, if the parents here that have like your early childhood development going age kids, whether with special needs or not, I highly recommend that. My kids, all 3 of them, they went through that. And it's because also, it sounds like I'm marketing Montessori, but that's the space I'm in. So it also focuses on the child than the curriculum. So you learn with the child. So if the child has what we call sensitive period. Sensitive period is like when the child develops a high level of interest in a specific area. You don't kill that, but you capitalize on it. Let's say the child has a high sensitive period on maths. You give as much, they last for a certain time, those sensitive period. You give the child exposure to that subject as much as you can, because their brain is ready, because there's an interest in that. But with a very fixed curriculum at school, you cannot do that. If the curriculum said now, we must move from maths to this, So with the Montessori, you've got that room to adjust that. At that time, probably 80% of the work can be maths, and then you incorporate other things. So, and then once the switches to the other, you can. And at SCD level, you can do that because the focus is just exposing a child. It's not like now you're grade 1, grade 2. You can't do that much to the grade 1, grade 2. But with that, you give the child foundation. You prepare the child for even geometry at the age of 5. When they go and do geometry, they're like, oh, I've learned that when I was in preschool. Can you imagine? Yeah, okay.
I believe this is one of the nice information that any parent would like to have. Whether you've got small kids or you've got siblings that have got smaller kids, you can actually share the information with them. And it's not late for us to even take teenagers through it. I know of those who have taken their kids through that for maths purposes, and their kids have actually improved. Looking back, Busi, and do you sometimes sit down and pat yourself at the back and say, geez, it was very hard, but I've done it? There's still more to be done. But I think the phase that you have passed is usually very difficult. That's where a parent will cry and do all sorts of things. And probably you are better because you have parents. I didn't have parents. I was like an orphan at the time. So then it meant everything and anything had to be with me and the father. It's not the father, then I have to make sure that everything is okay. And there's work on the side. How do you view your journey up to now and all the milestones that you have achieved?
I think I can't say I've arrived. It's been a journey. And right now, I think, was it Khadi who asked about teenagehood, like there's different stages, you cross the stage. There are things that, for example, I will look back at, for example, the Montessori. I discovered Montessori like when I think Bonga was older, like 7, 8. And I was like, I wish I knew Montessorri way before, because I could have capitalized, but I couldn't, like hit myself and be hard on myself that I didn't know it. There are things that I look that I'm like, Lord, I thank you, we've been through this journey and there's good outcomes. But I haven't sat and like, oh, wow, I've done well. There are pockets of success. And I think one fear that I had, which I must say, one fear that I had, my child being abused or being taken advantage of when they're older or whenever. So that was the fear, and propelled me to work so much on the issue of confidence and independence that I think some days I listen to him or I get shocked. I look at him, how confident he is. And I feel like, I don't know whether I went overboard because he just speaks his mind. There was a time, a friend of ours invited us to church. They were celebrating their 10th year anniversary. And then they invited us to come. So I went there with my sister, my 3 kids. So we went there. And my son, he tells you every day, he says, I'm a leader, I'm a pastor, I'm a worshiper. That's him. Or the new one is like, he's the president. And I don't change his mind. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I embrace those things. So he's been telling himself that he's a pastor. I see there is Tando here. Tando knows Bonga. Like in church, he sits in front, the things that you see those pastors do, pacing up and down. He does that. I think that's his view, that pastors must pace up and down wherever he prays, he gets engaged. So we go to this event, and the event was, it's not an event, it's a church service, but celebrating 10 years. When I said event, sounds like another thing. But it's a church service, and they were live streaming, proper, they have it at a blend, they've got ushers, there's protocol and all of that. Getting my bag in the car, quickly Bonga went inside, and I looked, Bonga went inside, and he went straight to sit in the front row where the pastor sits. And not only where everyone else sits, he sat next to the main pastor. I find out, oh, that's actually the main pastor, the senior pastor. Went and sat there, and of course the ushers, they went and grabbed him. So when I come into the child, and they were like holding him by, close, this other lady, because when you look at him, sometimes you might think he doesn't have any condition, and he's dressed in a suit, his tie and so on. So the confidence there, he just went straight to the pastor's seat and was sitting there. And then the ushers explained that he went to sit there, and that place is reserved for the pastors. Then he says to this lady, but I am a pastor. Sorry about that. And he's like, I am the pastor, and to him, he's a pastor. I'm a pastor, so it doesn't make sense that I cannot sit there because I'm a pastor. Then I try to explain, like, no, Bonga, you can't sit there. Like, I try. And then he looks at me and said, Mommy, you can't talk to the pastor like that. He doesn't say you can't talk to Bonga like that. He says you can't talk to the pastor. So that's one element that sometimes I feel like, I think I went overboard with this confidence thing, and the independence thing. But of course, there is a room, for learning, especially this stage of teenagehood. He's in the stage, he's 17 right now. And then academically, like, he's not like in the stage like close to metric, if you think you compare, but he's getting bored. Like, also, I think from 2018, I've been homeschooling him. I've tried different ways, but like towards the end of last year, and even now, I'm looking at different options because he's bored, he's bored, and I think his brain, has taken whatever it can. So it's about looking at other options and looking at other alternatives, kind of creating. He's got this concept of work, that he, if he goes and assists, like someone who helps us with the garden, he calls that, oh, I'm going to do my work now. Like, he's going to assist whatever. We don't stop him if he wants to assist, like even at home, the girls, we all do the work, so that concept. So that's the space that I'm at, that I think I can learn a lot from other parents and other ways, in terms of like the lady I was talking about. I had a meeting last week with her, say, how have you dealt with this stage of teenage, with this stage that I found myself in? And she gave me some of the ideas that, okay, look at this, look at that. So yes, I thank God that we've crossed different phases, but now, even at this phase, I think I'm at a crawling stage of even understanding the way forward. But there's willingness there. He's got goals, you know, he tells you that at this age, I want to do this. He thinks years. So he'll tell you, oh, and not ages. When I'm 20, I'll be doing this. Driving a driver. I'll have a driver's license at 20. I'm like, oh, sure. You have, you know, when I'm this age, I'll be getting married. I'm like, oh, okay. The first time it shocked me, but it's in advance when 35. So yeah. It's a learning journey. Is it Dr. Tefu?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Ms Busi, for encouraging, for telling us this beautiful story. I mean, we are so inspired. You know, I'm asking myself a lot of questions. I'm thinking of our specialized hospitals in the country, where we have children with special needs or people with special needs. And obviously those people, those children, they do have families, and some families hardly visit them. And we hear about these stories every single day. So then I'm asking myself, if they don't actually prioritize those children with special needs, if they don't visit them, is it because of denial? So now I have a lot of questions in my mind. I think then denial is dangerous. So I know there are empirical studies which will address this issue, but I think denial it's extremely dangerous, because for the fact that some family members do not visit their special children at those, maybe at your schools, at our schools, at our specialized hospital, I think it's a clear indication that those families are actually in denial. Secondly, there's an issue of rejection from communities. I think it is also dangerous. I mean, then I'm thinking of our urban areas, our townships, and our rural, our villages there, where most of the people then still believe that when you have that special child, when you have that child with special needs, you know, there are those who will be saying, no, it is because of black magic or witchcraft. So I'm thinking of all these things. So I think rejection from communities, it is also something which is very dangerous, because then we must address it. We must come up with possible solutions for this. Then lastly, I'm also thinking we always blame government. If something bad happens, it's government. But for the fact that some of those family members do not visit their children with special needs at those schools, at specialized hospital, it's a clear indication that they don't prioritize them. But we expect government to prioritize those family members, but we do not do that ourselves. It's a problem. It's a problem. I think those family members you indicated, we have to accept. We have to accept, and they must be our priority before we can even say government must prioritize them. And I also want to check with you, how is the attitude? I know I'm not sure if it's going to be a simple one. How is the attitude of parents, especially towards their children with special needs? How is the attitude? You actually explained to us, you told your story, and I mean, it's good, it's a good story, but what about other parents? Since you're dealing with them every single day, how is their attitude towards their children? So yeah, this is all what I actually wanted to say. And in conclusion, I'm just saying, I think sometimes blaming government doesn't help. Because if we don't prioritize our people with special needs, I mean, and we then say government must do that, I think it's extremely, it's wrong. We must actually try to correct that as well. Thank you so much.
Dr. Tefu, you took words out of my mouth, because my next question was going to ask you, Busi, are we transforming as a community when it comes to dealing with kids and people with special needs, not only children, but even people in general? Well, not necessarily responding because he was making comments and also asking you questions. You can also couple that with indicating whether we are transforming and maybe come up with suggestions. Not only you, but everybody else can give inputs on how we can transform.
Thanks, Dr. Tefu. Yes, you've raised quite good things. The issue of no visits, you'll find really is just like denial, and you'll find out just talking from some of the parents, they've kept this to themselves. They haven't created support systems around themselves, and then they exhaust themselves. So this thing is them, and they're the one who are taking care of the child. And because they haven't opened up as well, even to the community doesn't know. So when they send a child maybe to a hospital and they don't visit, you'll find that some they taking it as a break, which is it's a painful thing that you just send the child to the hospital. I don't know, it's just for a short term or for a long term. You're right, there is denial there, and there could be other issues that like they're exhausted and they see this as an escape, if they're not dealing with it. The issue of rejection from the community, I must say there is rejection, like even communities where people still believe that if you've got a child with special needs, it's because maybe of some voodoo, because of some witchcraft and so on, to the point that then the parents who are having children with special needs, they hide from that community, they hide their child. I remember there's an association, the Down Syndrome Association. I was talking to the director and the deputy director, they were trying to, they were like, how do I get hold of these, the women that I'm talking to through the dialogues? Because they found that they've got the sports program. They've got a sports program that they were doing with, to train the kids, and they were exposing to the children even to international competition and all of that. In some of the communities here in Pretoria, when they want to collect the kids to participate in this program, the parents refuse. And the reason being because their transport is branded, association for Down syndrome, children. And the parents, they've said, no, I don't want my child to get into that community. Then the communities, they're going to think my child is retarded. So there is that rejection, and there is rejection at a personal level. There's rejection from schools. There's rejection everywhere. You do experience that. But I think for me, how to address that is about, especially children, parents with children with special needs, or even other partners, people, if you're working in the hospital that serves children with special needs, to educate the community. So we need to have, I believe that we need to educate the community, let people find out these are the things. And I know there are organizations that are doing that, and there's still room for, for plenty of people to work in that space where we educate our children. We allow, the communities, and we allow the communities into our space, into, understanding what it means, to have a child, and how they can support, and how can we continue to live in that matter. And that is something that is very big, to educate a community. I think to the issue of parents' attitude, parents' attitude, it differs. If the parent is still under denial, like they haven't accepted that their child has a special needs, then they get frustrated when the child is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, because they are limited by the condition that they have. Then comes the issue of punishing a child to the point that is extreme, that you will consider it as an abuse, So their attitude towards the child, is an attitude of a beta parent, if I may say so, a beta parent, and they're frustrated, and they like, this child doesn't listen and so on, and yet they're not doing certain things that will help the child be more cooperative, or be more like be more aligned to what they envision the child to be. So you find those parents that they haven't accepted, and therefore then they get frustrated with the limitation that the special need condition brings towards them, and then they become bitter, and the way they treat the child becomes a concern. And then you have other parents that, their attitude is that, this is my child, this is my burden, this is my child, God has given me this child. They take it as if this child is a problem and it's my problem, and they own it. And the challenge with that, then you become close as well. You don't have a support system for you, and you get exhausted as well, like physically. Like, so some of them, they will say that, there was a time I thought I was losing it, because you're trying to be this superwoman, who's doing everything. I'm saying women because I'm dealing mainly with women. There are fathers that have come to the dialogues that share. So you have this superwoman type of attitude that, I can do it all, I can manage and all of that. And then you find others that the attitude, like there's this couple, I remember this lady shared that having a child with special needs bring challenges into a marriage as well. So depending where your partner is, maybe as a mother, you might have accepted that this is the child, but as a father, you haven't. So the issue of raising a child, the child must be raised by both parents. Then it becomes challenging because then you don't agree on certain things or certain initiatives that needs to be put in place to help this child. So then you have that attitude of just, resentment, that there's blame as well, that if, the father or if the mother was open, we could have been this way with the child. I remember this other parent, the mother, she's got a social work background, and she knows that they need to be doing these things to help and assist the child. But the father is more like, no, this is our problem. And the father is more on keeping the child at home. That conflict between parents, when she was discussing this thing was that the end result of it was affecting the child, because they were, as a couple, they were not making right decisions for the child because they were not agreeing on issues pertaining the child, from even the issue of accepting that this child needs help, and so on. So then, that you can imagine the attitude today, if there's a conflict between the couple, and not just any couple, have conflict, but a couple about this child that they have. And there's an example of one parent who, the father was like, let's give the child for adoption because, I cannot have a child with a special need. And this mother, the child is now in the 20s. She was talking about it as if it happened yesterday. They did, apply for adoption. They took the child for adoption. On her way back in the car, she just jumped out of the car and went back to take the child. And of course, the marriage was history. So this mother, she was talking, you could feel the pain that she has raised. She's done well. She's got other 2 kids. She has raised these kids, but that scar of saying that my marriage, ended up breaking up because of this child was painful. But the question of, is it worth it, and so on comes. So if you have dealt with something like that and you've got resentment that this child, now I'm no longer married because of this child, can you imagine the attitude towards the child and towards the world around you? It's just not going to be good. By this lady, by God's grace, I want to say that, by God's grace, she wasn't bitter towards the child, but you could feel the pain that she has gone through of raising a child, being a single parent of 3 kids, and not getting any help from the partner because of this child, because you've accepted the child's a condition, and then your attitude, and you become protective. So I guess what I'm trying to say, there are different attitudes based on where, the parents are or the mother is, and also based on the stage of the child, and what surrounds them, the environment, the community, and so on. You can get different attitudes playing out there. And I think mainly, just to close that topic, is that it's important, once people find themselves in that, to seek help. And sometimes they don't even know that they need help, but starting having this conversation, I just found out that, having these conversations as well, the person it brings awareness that, oh, okay, actually what I'm going through is denial. Some people go through denial and they're not even aware that they're on denial. But by talking about these issues and, then they unpack, and you give people a space to go through the emotions, which for me, I think it's important, because once you go through, then you become sober and say, okay, I've dealt through the emotions, but now what is the way forward in assisting the child? Or government, I will leave that. Yes, we can't blame government, but there is a role that the government can play. And I think in some areas they are playing their role in the education space. I think that some of the policies that have put in place has been frustrating as well. For example, some of the parents have complained in terms of finding a school, a special needs for your school. So the system requires you to apply at the district and this and this. And parents know that process is even without children, especially just to apply for grade 1, grade 1 is a challenge. So even that from government is like, yes, the government is, trying it's best. But I think it's important also to do, which maybe they are doing, I'm not saying they are doing that, to talk to their parents and say, okay, for these processes and systems that we've put in place, are they helping you? How, to engage? So I don't know, I haven't dealt with government, so maybe they are doing that. But if they're not doing that, I think that will be the great thing, just to also communicate and say, how can we best, help you? Because sometimes you find out there are people who are placed in this position, they're making decisions, they're putting processes and systems in place, but they have no clue what, like the daily struggles of these parents. They might have a textbook understanding, but the interaction and doing some research and doing some surveys and asking parents, I think it will add more value in the government's initiatives to assist in the space of, raising children with special needs as a community, because the government is part of the community as well.
Wow. I think you said a mouthful. Any other question, comment before you give us your parting shots? For me, what you have just said, you have summed it up in a manner of us. It's like you're throwing it back to us as a community, because we are also part of the community, to say, how much are we doing to educate ourselves, to be able to understand? I mean, at the time of my child not speaking, you could hear comments, you could hear the way people were not comfortable to be amongst him, because the only thing he could do was to play hyper, and that was not very comfortable to deal with. But because I had accepted from the word go, it was easier to deal with. But there are those who are not accepting, and they're not even part of those families, but they have got comments that they pass. The attitudes towards those kids are not, even older people. You find that there is not much acceptance of people who are having some disability. Even at work, there is not much acceptance for people who have got some special needs. No, hiring this person is going to be very expensive. We have to buy this and that for that person to be part of so yeah, we have a long way to go. And I think it's something that we have to take it upon ourselves, and from different organizations, to make sure that we do sort of an awareness. I'm just thinking now on the side, I'm going to talk to you on how you can take whatever sessions you have to the schools that Dr. Defu was talking about, and educate the very same parents who are abandoning their kids because they feel they are burdens, and when they are at school, they just feel good riddance. So maybe there's a need to have that kind of a drive and awareness campaign for people to be aware of exactly how to deal with this kind of situation. In the absence of any other questions, your parting shots, I cannot thank you enough.
Yes, no, thanks. I think going back to your question, are we transforming? I think we are transforming. We are transforming, because having a child with special need, it transforms you as a parent. I don't think there's any parent that says, I am the same before. I'm the same person as before having this child. So there is some transformation. Is it positive or negative? That's another question. And even as communities, we are learning. I think people, it's not the same as in the 80s or in the 90s in terms of understanding the issue of special needs. I remember even in my community, people thought, the word, which I don't like, think these are retarded people. So I think there has been some transformation. And I think to parents who are having children with special needs, what I would say is that, it's okay. I'm reminded actually of a scripture that, when there was this child who was blind or deaf, I don't remember now. And Jesus healed the child, and the disciple asked, who sinned? Who's to be blamed? Whose sin was it, the parent or the child, that this child was born this way? And Jesus' response was that, no, this child was born so that my glory may be revealed. And I think for me, that scripture has really, really, really encouraged me that all these kids, they are born so that we can see even the transformation that God can bring in the person. in the person as a parent and in the person as you know, your child in this matter, that, you know, we can all say that there are pockets of transformation in your child. The child might not be in the space where you want them to be or in the level that you want them to be, but we have seen transformation. And if we look, depending on the lens that we are using, we can see, I believe that, you know, if you take the magnifying glass and you put on the negative, that's all you're going to see. But if you put on the positive, said, wow, my child is now walking, and you focus on the positives and you celebrate the positive, and of course, seeking help and the support that you need, you know, we'll continue to see that transformation and transformation in the community if we are open to share and to allow people in our own space as parents with children with special needs to understand, to talk and ask for it, and allow people to help us. You know, there was a time I was like, no, I'm not going to send my child to visit. What if? But to open and allow other people to help us. Support is then, you know, let's use it. Even in our own corner, if you open your eyes and look, you will find it, that there are people who are willing to help. Focus on those, and those that are critical, criticizing, that are negative, just understand that it's not about you, but it's the space it's about the person's space that they are occupying. They're dealing with their own issues, and now it's just coming to you. Yes. So yes, thank you for the time. Thanks for inviting me. And I think this is just touching the surface on this topic. You know, there are experts out there that can even add better value, or not even better, let me not, you know, categorize it, that can add other aspects, you know, if you look from medical perspective, from therapy and so on.
But we have done, I think we have covered quite a lot of issues. No parent will say that they didn't learn anything from this, and it's something that many parents are going to be implementing. I've also revived our conversation that we once had, and some of the things that I might have forgotten that maybe I can improve from. Though I may not be in the same space I was then, but things can improve. So thank you so very much. And thank you to everybody who joined and even those who left. This was quite a very important question. One that we hardly want to talk about. We usually would avoid talking about this kind of topics. Focus on the theory part of things and not much practical. So thank you so much, Busi. And I believe this is the beginning of us engaging more and more. This video is going to be shared with you and everybody else on YouTube. I'm going to share the link. And other than that, thank you. I think you must take it to the schools. That's what I want to say. You must take it to the schools, the special needs schools, and ask the parents to come and listen to your story, because I think it can change the way they look at their children now and going forward. But thank you so much, and happy Mother's Day for tomorrow, every lady that is here.
Yes.
To watch the video. Thank you so very much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening and happy Mother's Day. And thanks to everyone that have attended.
My regards to Bonga. We spoke about him without him being here. We really appreciate it. Too.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks, Tembi, and all the best with the other engagements.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to our channel and also follow and like our LinkedIn and Facebook page. See you next time.